Hello and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. This podcast explores how authors create a world that we can escape into. Join me as we demystify the magic that keeps us turning the page. Hello and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. Today I'm speaking with Grant Ginder to talk about his latest novel, So Old, So Young. It follows 6 college friends across 5 parties and 20 years. A New Year's Eve party, a wedding, a birthday, a kid's Halloween, and a funeral. From a night where everything felt possible to a morning where they have to reckon with what actually happened in between. It's a book about people who met at Penn and spent 2 decades showing up for each other, making tiny decisions they didn't notice until those decisions became their lives. If you love character-driven books, which I do, this novel is for you. I couldn't put it down. Think Normal People, or if you're a boomer like me, the 1983 hit movie The Big Chill. Grant grew up in Laguna Beach, worked as a speechwriter in D.C., earned his MFA at NYU, and now teaches writing there, while living in Brooklyn with his husband, Mac, and their apparently disastrous dog, Frankie. Welcome to the show, Grant. I'm so glad you could make it.
Thank you so much for having me. And that was such a lovely description of the book. Thank you.
Oh, it's such a good book. I really loved it.
Thank you.
Okay, first question. So your inspiration, you've talked about waking up at 38 or 39, literally not knowing where you were, recognizing your apartment, your husband next to you, but feeling like you'd woken up in someone else's body playing an adult. That's such a visceral feeling. How did you go from middle of the night anguish to, okay, this is a novel?
That's a very, very good question. And it took quite a lot of therapy, I think. And I still haven't figured out the answer to kind of like stopping the middle of the night panics. It was a feeling that really plagued me. This sense that time was moving at a speed that just seemed to just keep accelerating, and that I had no control over. And, it's one of those feelings that everyone has, but when you have it, you think you're the first one to have ever actually felt it, right? You're the first one to have ever gotten old in the history of the world, which I think is actually kind of the germ for a lot of books, where you convince yourself that something that you're feeling is incredibly idiosyncratic, and you want to explore it and figure it out and kind of get into its nooks and crannies. And in doing so, you realize that everyone else has felt the same thing.
So you had this realization that you had this fantastic theme thing going, and you had to write a book about it.
Yeah, and it was sort of a, I won't say it was like a light bulb went off moment for me. It was more of that. I also wanted to write a book about friends, and I was interested in playing around with structure and doing time jumps, kind of these massive time jumps, right? The book is arranged in these 5 parties, and you actually only see these friends at the 5 parties. So there are time jumps of anywhere between 3 to 5 years between each of the parties. And books that had that device in it always really interested me. And as a writer, I'm always trying to do new things, and that challenge was really appealing to me. So as I was planning it out, and as I was thinking about it and thinking about what the parties would be, this obsession with time that I had just started naturally making its way into the book, until to the point when I started writing it, I was like, oh my God, this is a book that is a manifestation of my own midlife crisis.
Love it. Okay. So the book spans 2007 to 2024. Which is basically the entire emotional biography of a millennial. You're the generation that was raised on you can be anything, and then handed a series of collapses. Your characters seem to live in this space where they're too self-aware to just be happy, but too hopeful to fully give up. They're mourning their friendships while they're still in them. Is that something you think is specifically millennial, or is that just what happens to everyone in their early 40s?
I think, frankly, the answer is both. I think that aging for anyone, regardless of generation, is this process of realizing that, as you beautifully said during your introduction to the book, that life really is a series of tiny choices that you don't realize that you're making. And then until you wake up on the cusp of your 40th birthday and realize, oh my God, all of these little choices ended up creating the contours of my life. And that, life naturally is about kind of a diminishing of possibilities because you make one choice and that essentially precludes, a whole host of other things that could have happened. And so that feeling and that realization, which I think is bittersweet, right? Because you look around and you can be completely happy with your life and be like, wow, I made all the right choices. However, there was this other life that I could have been living. And what is that other life, right? So I think that is very normal and is sort of one of the beautiful parts about living. I think, though, that with my generation in particular, we were raised with this almost like delusional sense of hope, right? We were going to be the generation that ushered in the new millennium. We saw the creation of the internet, which was supposed to usher in this whole host of possibilities for us. We were the generation that was sort of raised on Hamilton and like songs that had that stand, the stomp, stomp, clap kind of anthem to it. But then, as you pointed out, we ended up facing, this disastrous reality where we've lived through 4 recessions now. We've lived through a number of kind of ill-begotten wars. We've seen our avatar of hope, Barack Obama, replaced with an avatar of cruelness and Donald Trump. And so there is this kind of like, I think this weird relationship between hope and despair that we are constantly living with. But the hope, I think, is so ingrained in us that we're clinging on to it in a way that is
despairing.
While despairing, right? Versus like you look at Gen Z and it's like just despair. It's like just total, utter nihilism. And I think that's something that is particularly beautiful about millennials is that we still cling on to that hope.
Gosh. Yeah. Good answer. Hopefully cling.
I know.
Hopefully this will be over soon.
I know. No, from your lips to God's ears.
Yeah. So these 6 people became friends when they were basically kids. Before careers, mortgages, divorces, babies, all of it. 20 years later, they've been shaped by completely different realities. There's a case to be made that the friends who fit your life at 42 aren't necessarily the ones you picked at 22. So what do you think that old friendships give us that newer, maybe more convenient ones can't?
Gosh, Elena, these questions are just really, really amazing. It's so funny. I was just thinking about this the other day. I was like texting yesterday randomly with a friend of mine from college and was kind of thinking about this. And I think that there is a sacred history to old friendships. I think that newer friendships can feel more convenient. They can feel like they match whatever life you're living at that moment. They can feel more exciting. But there is something to be said for history and shared memory. And the experience is born from those, or that they gave rise to those memories. And that's irreplaceable. I went to last summer, a year ago now, I went to my 20th college reunion, and just being around those people some of whom I'm very close with still, and some of them, for whatever reason, our lives have kind of drifted apart. It's certainly a different feeling, kind of like slipping back into conversation with them, but you realize just the importance of what those shared memories is. And that you can't replicate with people who you've known for 3 years.
No, you're right. This is probably an aside, but my daughter just came back from her 5th reunion at Duke.
Okay.
And she was saying what was interesting wasn't just seeing her the 5 years, because they're pretty much, that's like your New Year's Eve party. Maybe they're pretty similar, although some of the guys let themselves go.
It's amazing how that happens. Like when I'm sorry to
taking their
interrupt
shirts off.
Oh my gosh. Come on. Oh, so they were really living it.
Like they did it when they were in college, when they looked like they should.
When they looked like, yeah. It was really amazing to me so in my 20th, sorry to interrupt, but in my 20th, that really amazed me too, was like the women all looked incredible. Like really still like they were like keeping it together. And the straight men, it was just like, what happened?
Exactly.
What happened?
Exactly. And then she said you could see the other decade, it was every 5 years, and you could study those groups. And she said the ones who were around, I guess 35 or 40, the women started definitely using Botox, and the men were much tidier. They were like dads.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it was really 63. The men really, straight men really.
I just really let themselves go. I will say the people at my 20th who were the most popular were the people who had become dermatologists and plastic surgeons. They always had like a small kind of like cloud of people around them.
I love it. Okay, back to the interview. I know. Okay, so you went from writing speeches for John Podesta in D.C. to writing novels in Brooklyn. That's a very specific kind of pivot. Did political speech writing teach you anything about fiction? Like, is writing a novel just a long speech where nobody claps? I mean, is there any similarity?
Yeah, I think that there's a ton of similarities. I think that speeches are narratives, and it's a tool that just uses narrative as rhetoric. And so, you have in the same way in the novel, you have like an evolution of a character. In a speech or an essay, you have the evolution of an idea. And that idea becomes more complex and more compelling and hopefully more convincing and persuasive as the speech progresses. And so I teach at NYU now, I actually teach essay writing. I don't teach fiction. And I'm constantly, mostly because I know nothing about writing essays, I am constantly trying to make analogies to fiction writing to my students who are writing essays, and how, in fact, the two genres of writing are not so dissimilar.
Okay, essays and novels. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have like a good essay has a kind of narrative arc to it, right? You start with an idea that might seem, kind of interesting but perhaps not fully fleshed out. And then over the course of the essay, that idea makes a number of encounters, right? With evidence, with analysis, with reflection. And so that by the essay's end, it's something that is compelling and rich and perhaps counterintuitive and makes you think. And a novel works in the same way, right? You're first introduced to a character and you're like, okay, I kind of understand who this person is. And then if it's a good book, like that character encounters a series of events that in some way makes them change. And so there are, I think, these parallels between the two forms that we often don't think about when we're writing either essays or novels.
Right. No, and it reminded me two things. It reminded me, I interviewed Allegra Goodman about her book that I really, really liked, This Is Not About Us. And her first chapter, she submitted as an essay in the New Yorker in 2014. And then she said she wanted to learn more about these characters that she had written about, but it was a standalone essay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And your New Year's Eve party could have just been
just on its own.
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of similarities that when you kind of dig into it, you're like, oh, I can see how these two forms can inform each other.
Now, this one, I don't think you've answered this because this is but it's going to be a little bit similar. You structured the whole book around 5 parties. Millennials are supposedly the generation that killed everything: napkins, diamonds, home ownership. Did they also kill the party, or is that the one thing they got right?
Well, that is a great question. I'm going to push back a little bit and say a lot of those things I don't think that we killed. I think that they were just not made available to us. I think that there's a reason why we aren't buying homes, and it's because we've been screwed over by the economy in such a way that we can't afford them. Parties, no. I think that we've mastered parties and that we are keeping them alive. I think that one of the main differences between millennials and Gen Z is that it seems that Gen Z doesn't party, right? And they don't like socialize in the way that we do. I would even go so far as to say that we are a generation that relies and has come to rely, especially on our friends and the social groups that we associate with at parties, perhaps because we've kind of been through the ringer together.
Yeah. I have 2 millennial kids, and they're younger than you, but I would agree they're very good at parties.
Exactly. Avocado toast and parties.
Avocado, yes. That too. So you wrote 11 drafts of this book. In how many years was that?
Oh, man. I started this book in 2022. And so probably, 3 to 3.5 years, maybe it took me.
Okay. So you were pretty efficient in your rewriting, in your each draft, because I was expecting you to say like 10 years.
I don't know if efficient is the word. I think that I think that I wrote a lot. I think that if I were being efficient, I wouldn't have hit 11 drafts. I think that there was a lot of trial and error. The structure of the book is such that you almost have to like resist your intuitions as a writer because of the time jumps. All of the tension of the book is there essentially because each section starts in media res, right? You start and you don't know what's going on as the reader, and you have to figure out like what relationships are fraying, like who is this new character, what is the relationship to everyone else. And when I first started writing it, my sort of natural inclination was to spoon feed all that information to the reader via backstory. And so I relied a lot on backstory, which ruined the tension of the novel. I also just, and I think that this is something that I often deal with when I'm writing a book, the first draft. I want like everything to be in it, right? I want like literally every theme and every storyline to be in the novel. And so like in the early drafts of this novel, there was like an environmental justice storyline. There was like a workplace abuse storyline. And it was just, it was ridiculous. It was just like, bursting at the seams and had no direction. Yeah. And so it was around draft 7 or so where I finally was like, look, this is a novel about time and about friendship. And anything that does not serve the exploration of one of those themes needs to kind of get out of here.
That was a good idea because it was really good. I liked how we weren't told everything.
Oh, thank you.
That was just added to it. You said parties hold this outsized, almost mythic role in friend groups. They're the scenes we keep retelling. But parties are also performances. Everyone's on. Did you find that setting every major section at a party made it harder to get to your characters' real selves or easier because the mask is part of the story?
Absolutely the latter. I think that in seeing or in exploring how these characters were projecting themselves, it was like, for me, kind of a direct line to their deepest insecurities, the ways in which they weren't stacking up compared to their friends, the ways in which they weren't hitting these sort of fictional markers that we all think that we should be hitting at certain ages. It was a really great way for me as a writer to learn about these people. Was, okay, what are they performing? Because the thing that they're performing is the thing that they secretly know that they aren't.
That's good. So that was, very good setting choice, because I was thinking with normal people, which you read 7 times, those scenes are kind of in the aftermath of the event.
Yep.
And yours are opposite, and I can see how it would really benefit your characters.
Well, she's just, she's such a master of, Sally Rooney is such a master of just making it look so easy, and the way in which she just moves through time in that novel is really remarkable. And the way that she creates tension, to your point, between kind of seeing the aftermath of the event and then going back and seeing just enough of the event itself for us to understand why that event was so important in these 2 characters' lives. It was just like, it's a masterclass.
And so can you give in terms of moving through time, if you had to say some of the things you saw she did that really taught you technique, what were they? Because you do it all the time in your book. So tips for people.
Not holding the reader's hand. In other words, trusting your reader, trusting that you have an intelligent reader who kind of understands that a novel in itself is a conceit and that it's an artifice in itself, right? And a novel can move through time in ways that other forms cannot. And so just trusting that they'll follow you, I think is probably the greatest thing that she does that I took from that book, is just go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Okay. 11 drafts. You said that most of these drafts are about taking away rather than adding, that the narrative tensions comes from what you deliberately withhold. How did you know when you'd withheld enough versus too much? Was there a feeling that the gap was doing its job, or did you get feedback from, readers, galley readers or something?
My editor is really, he's so talented. His name's James Milia, and this is my 4th book with him, and he's just an absolutely remarkable editor. And the thing that he's really good at is basically saying, we don't need this. And, this paragraph of backstory could be conveyed in a single sentence or an exchange of dialogue. And so he was really, really crucial for that. I think also when I realized that all of the backstory, and again, like around draft 7, when I realized that the thing that was harming the book and not making it work was indeed the backstory, and was in a weird way caring about the reader more than I cared about the kind of lived experience of these characters on the page.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That was the moment where I was like, okay, the goal needs to be to get rid of as much of the backstory as possible, because all we really need to know is enough of what happened in the past to understand why these characters are acting the way they are right now. And so once that was accomplished, I got rid of anything that remained.
Yeah, because Mia just works, she's working at one place, and then the next time we see her, she's at the New York Times.
Yeah.
And there's no story about that. But we didn't need it.
No, because who cares why she works at the New York Times now? That's a great job for her. But what matters is how that fact is contributing to her life at this moment when she is going to a birthday party in Amagansett, right? And that is the only thing that matters. And so it doesn't matter how she got to the New York Times. It doesn't matter who her boss is at the New York Times, because this isn't a book that's about that.
No. Yeah. Brilliant. Let's see. Dialogue. So your characters talk the way actual people talk, which is to say they're funny and deflecting and only occasionally honest. You teach writing at NYU. Now I know essay writing. When your students write dialogue, is there a mistake that you see most often? And again, dialogue. What tips do you give your students?
Well, I will say, I have taught fiction writing before. I don't currently, but I have. And my number one tip is just to listen to people. One of my favorite things to do is to go eat at a restaurant alone and sit at a bar and just bring a book but not read the book, and just kind of have it open in front of me and listen to the people next to me and how they talk, particularly if it's a first or second date. It's there's no greater gift than sitting next to two people who are on a first date. I love it. And because people don't tell the truth, and or they deflect away from the truth, or they only give us half truths, or people think every conversation is in some way a performance. And so you have to think about that when you're writing dialogue. People don't over-explain themselves. People more often than not under-explain unless they're incredibly nervous, right? And so my best advice is just to listen to people. Even in very highly regarded literature, I'll read things and I'll be like, has this person never heard how someone speaks? I think that people often try to use dialogue as a stand-in for exposition in novels, but that doesn't work because people don't explain in that way, right? People don't monologue like they do in movies or in badly written fiction. And so just listen to people. Go sit at a bar, bring a book and don't read it, Find two people on a first date.
Exactly. I love eavesdropping myself. when Mia figured out that Sasha was lying, it was because Sasha, her answers were too long when she was telling. It wasn't believable. The first rule when you're lying, keep it brief.
Whenever I have a student who is like emailing me about being absent, I always know they're lying when they give me like a huge long explanation about food poisoning. And it's like,
Because
no,
if you
you're
have food
like,
poisoning, you are on the floor.
you're on the floor and you're not emailing me, or you're just saying I'm really sick, right? You're not like telling me like which halal cart you ate at and like what you think you ate and all of that. It's like number one sign that you're lying because you're over explaining, and that's just like not how people. Yeah,
It's very funny. Okay, next one. So the book covers almost 2 decades of New York. The city in 2007 is not the city in 2024. You grew up in Laguna Beach and landed in Brooklyn. How conscious are you of using the physical landscape of New York as a kind of clock, a way to show the passing of time without saying it?
So in this book, it was incredibly important because, as you just pointed out, it is about the passing of time, and people change, but places also change, right? I think that there's this like weird thing that happens where when you move to a city, like in your first like 5 years in the city, like you want the city to stay exactly how it was for the 5 years that you moved there. But cities are organisms, and cities evolve, and cities change to meet the needs of the people who are living in them. And so it was important to me to kind of track that along with the characters, right? To kind of show how their evolution is occurring in parallel to the evolution of this place.
So good. Okay. Yeah. There's a Halloween party in Montclair, in New Jersey, in this book that apparently goes horribly wrong, or that does go horribly wrong.
That does.
Without giving away too much, what makes suburban horror feel like the right note for that section? Is there something about a party in the suburbs that's scarier than one in the city?
Oh, great question. So yes, I think for 2 reasons. One, you have this inherent tension between the people who live in the city still and the people who live in the suburbs, where the people who live in the suburbs are self-conscious about the fact that they no longer live in like that, chic cosmopolitan city or whatever they're thinking. And then you have the people who live in the city who feel like maybe they're not as grown up as the people who are now living in the suburbs, right? Because they don't own this big house and they don't like have all these trappings of life, and they're still, kind of like playing out their youth in the city. So you have this it is from the get-go fraught. The relationships are fraught. And then for the people who live in the city who like have not driven in, right? They are trapped there. And if this thing goes wrong, escaping is very, very hard because they don't have a car. And, actually the train lines to Montclair, like there's like something tricky with like there isn't like a direct train on the weekends or something like that. And so like and this party takes place on the weekend. And so they are like, they have to get out, they have to order like a $300 Uber or something. And so like they're trapped there, right? It's so sure it's like being in a cabin in the woods, kind of like you can't get out. Yeah.
The Uber, 18 minutes. Like
18 minutes.
Death.
Yeah. Exactly.
When they really wanted to leave.
Exactly.
That was good. Okay. Let's see. The title, So Old, So Young, is kind of a perfect distillation of what it feels like to be a millennial in your late 30s or early 40s. Did the book always have that name?
No. Oh my gosh, no. The title did not come until this book was like done, like totally done. And it came after like long discussions between my agent, my editor, and myself, where we batted around some really bad titles for like weeks on end. And then one day, originally the book was called The Farewell Party, which just like felt really sad. And so like, it was just like, cool. And so one day my editor called me and he was like, we are not hanging up the phone until we have a title for this book. And he was like, what we want is something that is like specific, that doesn't feel like some sort of saying or cliche and captures the feeling of being so old and so young. And I was like,
oh, he said
that's
that.
it. Yeah, yeah. And so I was like, that's it. So old, so young. That's what the feeling is. That has to be it. And so we were kind of like, from there, we were off to the races.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's perfect because we are, it's like prematurely nostalgic.
Yeah, yes.
Let's see. If one of your NYU students handed you in this first chapter of Sold So Young as a workshop submission, what note would you give them?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of like, if you mean just like the party scene.
Yeah.
Like, you mean just like the New Year's Eve party?
Yes, just the New Year's Eve party.
So I've received just the New Year's Eve party and I don't know the rest of the novel. What note would I give them? I would say, gosh, I have like so many notes. I don't.
What's going to happen to Mia and Marco?
I know. I was like, what note would I give them? I think that I would tell them to cut down the opening conversation between the two random girls that Mia is overhearing. That starts the section. That is there because a friend of mine was on the Long Island Railroad and overheard that conversation and was between these two girls and was live texting it to me. And I was like on the floor in stitches. And I was like, I cannot believe this conversation. But it was like actually like a lot crasser, the conversation is. I've sort of like, I've lightened it up a bit. But I was like, I have to include this. And I, at the time, I like really, this was like around draft 10. I didn't quite know how to like get into that party. Because, that first chapter was kind of that first section was the most hellish one to write because it has to do so much. It has to establish the characters. You somehow have to like get Mia and Marco to fall in love. You have to like, there's just so much going on that like all these balls are up in the air and you have to do it quickly. And I didn't really know how to get into it. And so I was like, what if I just start with Mia overhearing this like really crazy, funny conversation? And I like kind of got carried away with it. And I look back now and I'm like, maybe it didn't need to be like 7 pages. Maybe it could have been like 3.
Too funny. Very. Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness. What a nice friend for texting you that.
Yeah, I know. No, I know. And it was like, he was doing it like as the conversation was happening. And so it was like I was watching a TV show. Yeah. And like I was like, what is the next girl going to say? What is she going to say? And then he would like send it to me.
It's so funny. All right. Okay. Last question. You'll be happy to hear. You said you started this book as your own midlife crisis. Now that it's out in the world, is the crisis resolved, or did writing about it just make you more aware of it?
Oh, no way. It's totally not resolved. I'll say this. I think that what I learned both through writing the book and probably just like thousands of hours of therapy is that like, I don't think that feeling of waking up in the middle of the night and being surprised at how your life has turned out ever goes away. I think that instead, perhaps you get more used to that feeling, right? And that you just know going forward that life is going to surprise you and you are going to make all of these choices that you're not going to recognize as you're making them as choices, but that are going to result in a moment 10 years down the line where you wake up thinking, oh my God, if I had not done that one thing, all of this would be different. And that's just what life is, right? And that's sort of like one of the incredible mysteries and surprises of living. And so totally. I think I'm learning as someone who is a control freak and who does not do well with change. I am learning that's part of a gig.
And you can't really stress about it.
No, you can't. You can't.
I lived in London for 30 years and I really thought was married with 3 kids. I really thought that's where I was going to live forever. And then I got divorced, and I was having dinner with some old friends from our boarding school, so similar, in Andover, so in Massachusetts. And I just was like, do you know any single guys? And he told me about somebody who lived in New York in our class that I never knew. I married to him, and I moved back to the States.
Oh my God.
I would never have guessed that I would move back to the States. I was living there. My kids all grew up there. They're English.
Yeah.
But it all just changed because he happened to know someone, and I happened to be going to New York. I didn't really, I would never have predicted that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like that kind of stuff, where like suddenly you wake up and you're like, oh my God, now I'm living in New York now. And I was just in England for 30 years. And but now I've been living in New York for 10 years. And that's how did that happen? Yeah.
Exactly. It's funny. It is life.
Yeah, that's just what it is. And you can't, the more you try to control it, I think the more mundane and boring and smaller, smaller it is. And so you just kind of have to be aware that there are going to be those moments at 3 a.m. every once in a while where you wake up thinking, how the hell did this happen?
Exactly. Yeah. This is not my life. What was
yes,
that?
Exactly. It's that the Talking Heads song.
Talking Heads.
Yeah, exactly.
And then last, any newish books you've read recently and loved?
Yes. The book, The Director by Daniel, I believe it's Kellman. I could be getting the last name wrong. It's a German writer. It's in translation. It was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize. It is one of those books that I cannot stop thinking about it. And it reminds me of why I read fiction. It's about a film director trying to make films during Nazi Germany, the Second World War, and about the complicity of art and the little sacrifices that we make and big sacrifices that we make to make art. It raises some really thorny moral questions. And it's also just it is so damn funny. And the structure of it is so inventive and so cool. Okay. I can't stop raving about it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Grant, for today.
Thank you. This has been an absolute blast. Thank you for the fantastic questions.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope you enjoyed listening to Grant as much as I did talking to him. Not only did I love his novel, but hearing about how parts of the book was conceived is so much fun and really adds to my enjoyment of the book. And his tips on writing in general and dialogue in specific were so spot on. Less is often more. Exercise restraint, trust your reader, and go eavesdrop in a bar. That's it for today, and see you in 2 weeks.